Hello, this is Wicked Shrapnel, and I want to do a series of videos on the placebo effect. And I'm going to read some excerpts from different books and just talk about the placebo effect because I think it's one of the most fascinating things in the world. So, if you don't know, the placebo effect is when something happens that's not supposed to happen. And so, for instance, like a doctor says he's giving you a certain drug, but it's only a sugar pill. It shouldn't do anything, but it does do something because you think it's going to do something. Or something doesn't do something because you don't think. So it's all in your mind. And I think it's one of the most fascinating phenomenon in the world. So I'm going to read a chapter from a book called 13 Things That Don't Make Sense. And one of the 13 things is the placebo effect. So without further ado, here we go. Hope you like this. If you don't watch it. All right. It has brought me great comfort to know that I could, in some way, help people feel better, said Leo Sternbach, inventor of the anti-anxiety drug diazepam. Sternbach certainly did that in spades. What is only just starting to emerge is just how much Leo Sternbach's drug depends on people helping themselves to feel better. From 1969 to 1982, diazepam, marketed as Valium, was the top-selling pharmaceutical in the United States. At the height of its power, Sternbach's employer, the pharmaceutical giant Hoffmann-La Roche, sold 2.3 billion of the little yellow pills marked with a V. That was in 1978, and the drug had already been part of popular culture for more than a decade. Mother's Little Helper by the Rolling Stones, released in 1966, is a satire on domestic abuse of Valium. In the same year that the song was released, the drug gained a starring role in a cult novel, Valley of the Dolls. Diazepam, dolls were the lead character's means of getting through the strains of life in New York. Diazepam is now, according to the World Health Organization, a core medicine, essential for any nation's pharmaceutical store. The strange thing is, it doesn't work unless you know you're taking it. In 2003, a paper in Prevention and Treatment reported that diazepam had no effect on anxiety when it was administered without the patient's knowledge. In an extraordinary experiment, researchers in Turin split a group of trial subjects into two. One half were given diazepam by a doctor who told them that they were being given a powerful anti-anxiety drug, and the other group were hooked up to an automatic infusion machine and given the same dose of diazepam, but with no one in the room and no way of telling that they had received the drug. 2 hours later, the people in the first room reported a significant reduction in the level of their anxiety, and the second group reported no change. Anxiety reduction after the open diazepam administration was a placebo effect, the researchers suggested. A placebo is a medical procedure that has no medicine in it. A sugar pill or a spoonful of sugar water, a saline drip, or anything really. A parade of doctors in white coats coming to your bedside to offer reassurance can be enough to trigger the effect. The power of placebo comes from the deceptive message that comes with it. You are told, or you sense, this procedure or ritual will have an effect on your body or state of mind. And if you genuinely believe it, taking the pill or the drink, or in some cases just seeing the doctor, will produce exactly that effect. Witch doctors, shamans, and other purveyors of the magical arts are known to deal in placebos. When they carry out a sham ritual to cure a paying believer, that cure can work wonders. And the same might be said of televangelists and Western medical doctors too. Research has shown that white coats and stethoscopes can produce surprisingly effective placebo effects, as can good bedside manner. Doctors know that if patients feel that they are getting suitable treatment, the treatment is enormously more effective. In one sense, there's an easy explanation for all this. The chemistry of the drug is being augmented by chemicals secreted in the brain. The effect of what Fabrizio Benedetti, the leader of the Turin group, calls the molecules of hope. The difficult side of the new experimental evidence is that where we once thought we had a handle on the placebo effect, it is now becoming clear that we don't. In medicine, we have long been accustomed to accounting for placebo. Modern scientific medicine was constructed on the notion of randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial where drugs have to perform better than a dummy pill or inert saline injection. Now, though, things aren't so clear. Some analysts of the data suggest that placebo effect is largely a myth. What's more, the medical system was set up assuming not only the existence of placebo, but also that its effects can be separated out from the chemistry of the drug being tested. It seems that assumption was false, and the edifice of the pharmaceutical trial may have to be dismantled. No wonder a recent National Institute of Health conference declared placebo research an urgent priority. While the ethical issues surrounding placebo have long been debated to no conclusion, the scientific basis of the effect is a relatively new topic for research. The general conclusion here, it seems, is that placebo effect is due to chemistry. The classic demonstration involves inducing pain in subjects. The original work was done by dentists who had extracted molars from patients. However, less drastic measures are possible. The only truly essential ingredient is a little deceit. It all kicks off with pain-racked patients receiving something like a morphine drip, and later, after the patients have begun to associate the morphine with pain relief, you can subtly substitute saline solution for the morphine. The patients don't know that their morphine is nothing but salt water, and thanks to the placebo effect, they report that their pain medication is still working fine. That is strange in and of itself, but not as strange as the next twist makes things. Without saying anything to the patients, you put another drug into the drip, naloxone, which blocks the action of morphine. And even though there's no morphine going into the patient's body, naloxone still stops the pain relief in its tracks. The patients, oblivious to all that has gone on, now report that they are in discomfort again. The only plausible explanation is that the drug that blocks morphine's pain-relieving power also blocks the saline's placebo-based pain-relieving power, which means the saline really was doing something. It wasn't all in the patient's imagination, or at least it means that imagination can have a physiological effect. When the dentist first performed this trick, they attributed the placebo effect to the stimulation of the body's endorphins, natural opioids that act using the same biochemical pathways as morphine. The expectation of pain relief was enough to trigger an endorphin release that did the job, they concluded. Then the naloxone blocked the endorphins. That's why the pain came back. It turns out to be more complicated than that, however. What was once considered nothing more than the fancies of imagination is a real, repeatable, and multifaceted biochemical phenomenon. The placebo effect pulls out all the stops. The expectation of pain relief can stimulate all kinds of natural pain-relieving chemicals. When I asked Fabrizio if I could experience a placebo response for myself, he was far from convinced it would work. Normally his team won't tell their trial volunteers what kind of experiment they are carrying out, as such knowledge might skew the results. It didn't in my case. In a windowless basement room below Turin's Tower, San Giove Basta blah 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 hospital, I repeatedly subjected myself to pain, and against all my expectations, and with my full knowledge of what they were doing, the doctors present were able to reduce it with nothing more than a lie. My first experiment measured the effects of caffeine on muscle performance, following a routine that involves exercising before and after a small cup of cold, rather unpleasant coffee. While I was drinking the coffee, the white-coated Dr. Paulo, one of Benedetti's colleagues, filled my head with stories about how caffeine is a banned substance in athletics. Her sister, she said, does archery. She is always told not to drink anything containing caffeine before the event. Apparently, it enhances muscle performance and gives an unfair advantage. I knew there was a lie somewhere. Perhaps there was no caffeine in the coffee. Maybe caffeine has no effect on muscle performance. Or maybe Paulo simply reduced the resistant weights for the exercise session after the coffee break. But I was definitely able to do more after the coffee than before. When the experiment came to the end, Paulo came clean. There was no caffeine in the coffee. Nevertheless, I had been sufficiently convinced of my increased powers to perform much better the second time around. She looked rather pleased. The experiment was far from rigorous, and in my quick and dirty clinical trial, at least had many flaws. What's more, she hadn't expected it to work at all on someone who knew what was going on. The next test came from another white-coated doctor, Luna Colaco, who entered the room holding what looked like a couple of button cell batteries on a plastic strip. They were electrodes. "Do you mind receiving an electric shock?" she said. Kinky. When I consented, she strapped the electrodes to my forearm, and then she wired me up to a computer program to manipulate the mind as if it gives a series of electric shocks. The computer screen told me via a red or green light whether the shock I was about to get would be mild or severe. The deception here comes from the conditioning, where the brain learns to associate a color with an anticipation of a particular level of pain. The screen shows a color, and about 5 seconds later, the computer gives a shock. Green for severe, something like an electric jolt fence, and red for mild, no more painful than a light touch on the arm. But once the conditioning is established, playing with the color can play with the brain's perception of pain, and it worked. After around 15 minutes of conditioning, the last run of shocks all felt mild, like a touch on the arm, whether introduced under a red or green light, but they were all severe. Coloco told me afterward, by rights, every one of them should have felt like touching an electric fence. So in some ways, I shouldn't be surprised. The brain is an astonishing organ, a supremely complex collection of molecules that processes signals, both chemical and electrical, to give us a sense of who we are and how we experience the world around us. With careful control of the signals going in, why shouldn't that sense be open to manipulation? So that is just a quick overview of the placebo effect, and I'm going to put this into the mind equals blown section. So all these videos kind of touch on topics that are a little more intellectual and just stimulate your synapses a little bit. But I know that there's some of you out there that enjoy them, but if you don't, I have plenty of other episodes where I am just a funny guy. But I like to think about things that kind of blow my mind. So I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, I'll talk to you later. Take it easy.